Gentlemen, I have returned. I woke up today and decided that I wanted to be a hater, so we're going to be talking about a faction that I hate in 40k, the Tau. I don't really mean that in the they have no place in 40k and seething all over my keyboard type of way. Rather, I mean it in more of a I would gun them down with glee type of way. Because I believe in human supremacy. Does this make me evil? Probably. Does that bother me? No. Which is why it's our topic for today. The Tau are a young species. Their homeworld is tucked away within the Ultima Segmentum. Their world is kind of near the galactic rim, but on the other side of the galaxy. They're about as far from Terra as you can be. If I had to spitball a number, I would guess probably around 70,000 light years away. They were found by the Imperium initially in the latter half of the 35th millennia. At that point, the Tau were a species that was still in the Stone Age, and the Imperium prepared to wipe out the species and take their planet. As even in a vast galaxy, a habitable planet is still a valuable gem. Well, those dreams died when a warp storm locked off their planet and their little star cluster around them. The rock-throwing Tau were made up of a bunch of tribes, and they were locked in perpetual war with each other. Their society is made up of 4 castes. The water caste specialized in commerce and administration, earth were laborers and farmers, fire were warriors, air are their pilots. The 4 elemental castes were locked in perpetual war, and only the ethereals could stop them. This 5th caste just showed up out of nowhere sometime in the 37th millennium, and all their infighting was over and the species was now unified under the idea of the greater good. The idea that they should do whatever benefits the most people. Now, if you're asking who decides what's best, you're asking too many questions. And over the next 4,000 years, they would rise to become a spacefaring race with an interstellar civilization, spanning hundreds of systems across hundreds of light years by the time we reach the end of the 41st millennia, with multiple different species within their empire. This is where I gotta apply the brakes. The Tau went from discovering the wheel to interstellar empire in just 6,000 years. For reference, in the real world, humanity invented the wheel also about 6,000 years ago. And all we got to show for it are nuclear weapons, iPhones, and VTubers. We can barely get to our own moon. So if the Tau in the same period went from rock thrower to interstellar empire, that means one of 2 things happened. First, and most obvious, the Tau are more intelligent than humans. I refuse to believe this, so we are throwing that idea in the shit can. Second, someone was helping them. Or maybe it was just a happy coincidence that this new group of Tau just showed up and led them ever since, unifying their species under the religion of the greater good, and creating an age of exponential technological development. The same way that it's a coincidence that those very same ethereals are the ones who interpret that religion and make decisions on what is for the greater good, eliminating any who get in their way. This is sort of what happened in Halo with the Covenant. The symbol for the Tau Empire looks a lot like the Covenant symbol for Reclamation. Just tell me if this sounds familiar. The prophets randomly show up on the Elite's homeworld. They bring their religion through the promise of the Great Journey, they bring technology through Forerunner relics, and after forming this covenant around the promise of the Great Journey, they begin to rapidly expand and advance, bringing more species under their empire, with the prophets interpreting the will of the gods and what the next step to begin the Great Journey is, while everyone else is expected to obey or be branded a heretic and put down. So, in regard to the Tau and their rapid advancement, all I'm saying is it's very sus. Eventually, the warp storms would end, and the Tau would finally come into contact with the greater galaxy. They would meet humans through some Imperial worlds which were on the edge of the Imperium's borders. Humans doing business with Xenos is a big no-no, so when the Imperium at large found out about this, the Imperium did what the Imperium do, and sought to eradicate the Xenos, kicking off the Damocles Crusade, which would be a series of campaigns where the Imperium would fight the Tau. The most noteworthy was the Dalyuth campaign. Dalyuth was a major Tau world, and when the Damocles Crusade arrived to invade the planet, they found the Tau in defensive positions. The fleet had suffered a lot of attrition, and taking the planet seemed less and less likely, because although this is the Imperium of Man, you have to remember this is a little side project happening on the other side of the galaxy at the edge of the Imperium's borders. So they have about 40,000 more pressing conflicts that they have to split their resources between. There just wasn't good justification to commit the forces needed to siege a planet and take it the fun way. So, they considered Exterminatus on the planet. Needless to say, I'm a very big supporter of this idea. I'd be a horrible commander. I'd just go planet to planet dropping virus bombs. But some Xeno lovers had other ideas. So after taking a major city, the Imperium began to slowly retreat. They then got word that the Tyranid High Fleet Behemoth was barreling towards Ultramar, and the Damocles fleet was to stop fucking around and come assist. and that ended the first major engagement between the Imperium of Man and the Tau Empire. Over 100 years later, the Tau would have their own problems with the Tyranid, when Hive Fleet Gorgon, a surviving splinter fleet of Behemoth, would begin to invade Tau space. They would fight them off, but it was not pretty. It came at a great cost. The Tau still aren't a very big empire, so their forces are far from endless, where even a small Hive Fleet can feel endless. They would have some fights with the Orcs, some more with the Imperium. I mean, pretty much by this point, they're in the perpetual cycle of war that every other faction in the galaxy is. In one of the Tau expansion waves, they would set their eyes on an Imperial hive world. The Tau actually managed to subjugate it, but shortly after the Ultramarines arrived and things got scrappy. They accidentally woke up the Necrons, and they both dogpiled the Necrons before the Ultramarines just said fuck it and exterminatus the entire planet. There still are, like, skirmishes between the Tau and the Imperium. You know, the Tau might take over an Imperial world, but generally the Imperium has better things to worry about, and taking the Tau out would cost more resources than it would be worth right now. But, I mean, make no mistake, if the full weight of the Imperium came crashing down upon them, it would be over in like 3 days. The reason the Tau were so effective for an empire of their size is due to their technology. I don't know if I'd say they're more advanced than the Imperium. Even as a shadow of its former self during the golden age of technology, humanity still has some crazy shit in its back pocket. But for the standard rank and file guardsmen of the Imperium, they basically have the space equivalent of a jacket and a flashlight. The rank and file Tau soldier has standard issue full body armor and an M16. Their armor covers their entire body and has 2 separate layers, so they're probably not going to get taken out by shrapnel. Their rifles have stupidly long range, and more stopping power than a Space Marine bolter. So that should highlight why, if the Tau were in a defensive position, advancing on them is not going to be a fun day. They also have their version of power armor, which they call battle suits. They're more piloted than worn, and they're the Tau equivalent to Space Marines and Imperial Knights. But as far as infantry goes, the Tau don't do melee. I'm kind of 2 minds about this. Part of me wants to have a major beef with that, because if the guardsmen are willing to bonsai charge with shovels into the enemy, there's no reason why you shouldn't either. Another part of me is thinking how, you know, if I'm just a regular dude, I don't know about rushing into a melee with orcs. I mean, I would, make no mistake. Tyranids, I'm a little less sold on. Space Marines, yeah, we're not doing that. And the Eldar, I'd fight them with my fist. But, I gotta give them credit here. One advantage to being a multi-species empire is that if you need to do some melee, you just send in a cannon fodder species to do it for you. Their navy follows a similar principle in that they're designed to fight at range, which, in space, I'm not gonna lie, that makes a lot more sense. Though broadsides are badass, nobody here is denying that. Tau ships tend to be on the smaller side because, like their empire, although they're advanced, they lack scale. Although they're smaller, the weapons on these things will still easily snipe an Imperium warship. They just better pray for their own greater good that the Imperium fleet does not close the distance. They also have a unique way of achieving FTL travel. They have something called a slipstream drive. They create an antimatter bubble around their ship and slip in between real space and the warp. This causes the Matrix to bug out, and it slingshots them back into real space at massively faster than light speeds. Since they aren't entering the warp, they don't have to worry about demons. Though it can still be dangerous, get too crazy with the slingshot and it might just punch a permanent hole through real space, creating a wormhole. I mean, that's still safer than going into hell for fast travel, but it is slower. The Imperium should probably invest into this, to be honest, but with the Mechanicus doctrine, that's not going to happen anytime soon. On the other side, the Tau have tried to use a warp drive, but they don't have Psychers or Navigators, so that really did not end well. They don't have Psychers or Navigators because their presence in the warp is very small, and their souls are weak and lack potency. Maybe this will change as their species evolves, but with any luck they won't live that long. Until further notice, they have weak souls. But the Tau themselves are not the only species in their empire. The Kroot are these weird bird lizard people. The Vespid are bug spawns from hell, and if I see a single one of these, I'm glassing the planet. And like a dozen other species, including some humans who happen to forget where their loyalties lie. So, I mean, I guess they could get Psychers through them, but good luck with that one. But why do I hate the Tau so much? First, because they're aliens. Enough said on that point. Second, their empire is a coalition of aliens. I am of the mindset that any multi-species society is a ticking time bomb doomed to fail. Third, they have weak souls. The Orc soul is so strong it bends reality. The Tau soul is so weak demons barely acknowledge them. Fourth, their religion is stupid. The argument for the greater good sounds like a cover story for authoritarian rule. If you want to be authoritarian, lean into it. This greater good crap just sounds like communist propaganda. I'm not actually sure if that's an apt comparison or it's just my American blood calling something I don't like communist. I'm not sure. What I do know for sure is that it's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. But that's all I got for today, fellas. Do you like the Tau? If so, leave a comment so I can tell you why you're wrong, or leave a comment if there's anything else you want to tell me. If you liked this video, I would appreciate a like. If you disliked it, let me know by leaving a dislike. If you want to hear more from me in the future, you can subscribe. Until next time, gentlemen.